A friend of mine sent me a clip. It wasn't Salo, it was somebody else. Sent me a clip about an interview that Pierce Morgan had with Carrie Lake. What's her name?
Carrie Lake.
Carrie Lake. What's that other one that I was confused with? Ricky Lake. Remember that show? I don't know why I said that sometimes.
Funny.
Well, you
No.
can have a few more pounds.
You cannot.
That is so funny.
You can find polar opposites.
I haven't.
Ricky Lake and
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
But here's the deal. I mean, and her answer wasn't really good. I mean, a good enough answer for me, because Piers Morgan grew up in an environment they don't have guns. I get it. And he's much more respectful about it after the Ben Shapiro debacle with him and Ben years and years ago. Now I think they've reconciled, but Ben handled it very well. But she just didn't have she goes, I don't want any restrictions, whatever. And then she goes into the founding fathers, and it just wasn't. We got to get deeper. I mean, people want to blame. Again, I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to sound like a parrot. But we go back to blaming an object for the behavior or the person that uses it. We don't do that with any other issue in our society. And I'm going to continue to bring up intox manslaughters and alcohol in vehicles. More kids are killed in vehicle accidents than with guns. I mean, that was a CDC report. We talked about that, a month ago, George? And with alcohol, George actually corrected me. I used to use the number because I was only using one.
But they would
year.
disagree. They're actually saying the opposite. They're using the same CDC data to say the opposite. And that's because they're fucking up the data. That's the problem. They're going into the data and they're picking and choosing. They're calling children anybody from 0 to 19 years of age. So they're including 18 and 19 years old.
That changes
children.
the dynamic.
It changes everything.
I know.
So it goes from literally 4,800 drops down to about 2,000.
Yep,
So it's less than
2,100,
half.
yeah.
And so it totally changes their number. In fact, the narrative changes completely. So they're using this, but just make sure you clarify.
No, I'm glad you brought that up to people. No, you're 100% right. So did you see what he's saying?
From 2020.
No, I don't. Can you help me?
So they're classifying children differently. When you say like, okay, vehicle accidents kill more children, well, how do you define a child versus gun violence? So what George is saying on the gun violent argument, what they're saying is they're including 18 and 19-year-olds into children. I wouldn't even include 17-year-olds because the 17-year-old's an adult.
16 can drive.
Well, again, so the definitions matter. So when you add 16 to 19-year-olds, George is talking about 18 and 19-year-olds. But when you even add 16 to 19-year-olds, that changes your data completely. So, but nobody pushes that. Good point, George. But nobody pushes back on that, and it's important to do that. Vehicle accidents kill more children than gun-related incidents.
I have the report right here.
Okay, well, I want you.
Sorry, I was going to give you the exact numbers.
Go ahead.
CDC firearm-related deaths of children ages 0 to 19 totaled 4,368 in 2020, while motor vehicle deaths for the same age range totaled 4,036.
Look at that.
See?
Look at that.
But then when you correct and you look at it from 0 to 17, which is the actual legal definition of a minor, the number of firearm-related deaths then for children became 2,281, while the number of motor vehicle deaths became 2,503. And this is important. That's point one. Point two that I would caution, and I think you're on to this now, make sure you use the word accidental, because I don't like the comparison between, I think it's fallacious to argue gun-related deaths with alcohol-related deaths with motor vehicle-related deaths. You got to compare apples with apples. You got to look at accidental.
What do you mean accidental?
Well, by definition, a motor vehicle accident is going to be dead. Nobody tries. It's rare when somebody tries to commit suicide by vehicle.
I'm just talking about vehicle death, period. Because no one's talking about suicide with guns. Because there's 60% of gun deaths are by suicide.
Right.
I mean, so does that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the mass shooter. We're not talking about people that are committing suicide, and that's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just trying. You're right, George. I'm just saying that we're not. I'm just saying you want to talk about all guns. Well, let's distinguish 60% out, or roughly whatever the number is. Every year is a little different for suicide. And then you're going to talk about all vehicle deaths? Are we talking about intox manslaughter, racing, reckless driving?
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
That when you look at accidental, when you throw in that word and you look at accidental gun-related deaths versus motor vehicle deaths, which are by definition accidental, the motor vehicle deaths are 27 times higher than gun-related deaths or accidental.
Okay, I got it.
And that's important because otherwise...
But that's not what they're talking about. They're not talking. You're
They
trying
don't-
to.
they don't care
You're
about
trying to
precision.
compare accident to accident. I'm trying to compare just effect. And with let me say with
Yeah,
cars,
because it blows apart their narrative.
with vehicles, you want to fix that even for adult deaths. Change the speed limit to 30. Make every speed limit. And here's that.
Correct.
You want to talk about why do you need a gun that has a magazine with 30? Or that's a killing death machine. Well, so is a vehicle. Do a withdrawal. Do a recall on all vehicles, and because every vehicle, even a big
Even
beat-up
my car
even a
goes
beat up
has
car,
100.
even
Right.
even a bullshit car, whatever,
Yeah.
can go 100 miles an hour. Why? There's not a speed limit in the country that goes 100 miles an hour. What are we doing? So why don't we recall all the cars, buy them back, right? That's the argument, and then remanufacture cars that can only go 30 miles an hour. Never. We used to be on buggy and horse. It took forever to travel,
Correct.
but it's all
Right.
convenience and alcohol. So we have an unfettered access to alcohol. Alcohol-related deaths in the year that I was using, George used a different year,
I use 2020.
and so that was 140,000. It was 88,000. I think mine was back in 18. 88,000
Yes.
alcohol-related deaths to 35,000.
Oh no,
roughly
that yeah,
gun-related
no, they're
deaths.
both 2018.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're talking about alcohol-related deaths, all alcohol-related deaths, almost triple gun-related deaths. That includes the 60% suicide. Who's going after alcohol manufacturers? Who's going after bars?
Don't give me any
Who's going
ideas.
after restaurants? Who's saying don't have any? And no one's doing it. We're not doing that. That's what I'm saying. It's a bullshit fake argument. It's a straw man argument. We should never blame an object for the user's behavior. We hold the person accountable for an intox manslaughter, which is a horrible situation. We have to deal with those situations. You don't blame the alcohol, and you don't blame the car. You blame the individual who drank the alcohol allegedly to a level of intoxication that drove the car that caused the accident that led to the death. That's what we do. We don't blame the car or the alcohol, but with a gun, we blame the gun. It's not logically consistent if you want to try to be consistent, and it's not. And that's why I call it out every time, because it's not the issue. Now, let me tell you what I believe in. I am not, and maybe I'm too reasonable. Other people might not like it. I think a high capacity rifle is a unique weapon. I think that there should be, train. I think that people should be able to buy a rifle, a hunting rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun if you're not a gang member, convicted felon, and even some convictions like white collar. I think that's different versus violent crime. I mean, I think we need to relook at all this stuff. I really, really do. But that's something separate. But a high capacity rifle, which the world would call AK-47s and AR-15s, things like that. I think I don't have a problem with the waiting period. I just don't. I don't. I think you should be able to buy a handgun and a rifle, hunting rifle, shotgun immediately if there's no restriction. But this is a weapon. I mean, this is a weapon that can cause. And I know people that buy them and they just put them in a closet somewhere. I mean, you need to be able to use them. And I take it a step further. If you buy a handgun, train with it. Don't buy a handgun, and definitely don't carry it if you don't train with it. I mean, you can hurt yourself, you can hurt others. And so I'm a huge gun safety advocate. So, and George knows that, Saulo knows that, you know that, Karen. So I think we can be reasonable. Here's the problem. Because of the tribalistic mindset and the ideological push, and it's all or nothing for both sides, you have gun advocates are saying, bullshit, I'm not giving you an inch, Kerry Lake. And you have the other people saying, bullshit, I want them all.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you can have 5 rounds and go hunting. It starts there. It never ends there. Look at the bathroom issue. Like we talk about, it was never about bathrooms. And now we have drag queens, and this and that, and over indoctrinating our kids and having these kids exposed to this sexualization of our children. So
But changing
I'm
the
laying
age,
it all out there.
Changing the age is not going to change the problem on
What
when
age
you
of
can
what?
when you can purchase a gun.
look, we have laws in place that we're not enforcing. Enforce the laws we have.
Yeah, I think that's really where
convicted felon
we got to get back
is
to
not
that,
supposed to have
yeah.
a gun. Someone convicted of sexual crimes cannot have a weapon. I mean, certain ages cannot have weapons. We should I don't have a problem. We do backgrounds anyway. I mean, what I'm saying is I'm not saying it should restrict you. They do a federal background to make sure that you're not a convicted felon or whatever is on your background. If it should take a minute or it shouldn't take that long. It used to take a day or two. For me, it used to come up because of my previous arrest. It used to always take me a day or two to get a gun. I have my license to carry, so I get it quicker. But I mean, if we're going to make sure that people that are convicted and certain people shouldn't have weapons, and I'm not a constitutional carry guy. I don't believe that everybody should have a gun. I just don't. I don't think people that that are insane, people that when they talk about mental health, that's you don't believe. I had a buddy of mine ask me, and I know you want to ask me a question, Salo, and he's a pro gun guy and he's a lawyer friend of mine, but he leans left, and I love the guy dearly, and he's like, you think people with mental health should have guns? I go, define mental health. What does that mean? I mean, I promise you, after my brother passed away, I mean, I was dealing with a lot of anger and a lot of this or whatever. I mean, what's mental health? I mean, like domestic terrorist. A parent is a domestic terrorist, and we have the federal government going after parents because they don't want their kids exposed to sex. I mean, we think they're domestic. I mean, so the definitions matter. We've got. I mean, we hang out in sound bites.
Well, there are categories of mental instability like schizophrenia, multiple personality disorders, where you're hallucinating,
But if somebody's
delusional, and there's a
depressed
clinical.
and takes medicine,
Yeah, it's beyond-
for
it's
a
beyond
week,
depression.
I mean, a
I'm saying,
month
we
or
have
whatever.
we have to understand the definition. That's
Yeah.
all I'm
Right.
saying.
Fair
I'm not
enough.
advocating.
Fair enough.
My question was going to be on Ben Shapiro's comment. Ben Shapiro, he
I didn't hear
said
what it was, did it?
that he would agree that after the transgender shooting, right? He was a transgender. He said somebody with that type of mental health,
Right, exactly.
are not allowed to carry
That's
guns.
correct.
Well, then what
That's
is the
correct.
response to that now? What on the other side? Because it's not just that transgender shooting. There's been a number of them. I think there was a list.
There
we
have
talked
been
about
four.
it.
There have been four in
or
5 years. It's been 29 wounded, 15 dead.
Yeah.
Because they're taking medicine, right? They're taking.
No, they are.
They are, right?
There are.
Puberty blockers. They're changing up their whole.
Is that causing
chemistry?
mental?
Yeah, there are. Yes, there are. There
Salo-
are neurological problems.
Salo, you've
Significant.
heard me say this before. We don't look at look at the data behind SSRI drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. When you look at the side effects, did you sneeze, Dom? God bless you. When you look at the side effects, you say it's violent behavior and suicidal thoughts and tendencies and ideology. SSRI drugs. If you look at how many mass shooters had experienced or were on SSRI drugs, I don't want to give a number because I used to know the data back a couple years ago when I would debate this often, but I'll say a vast majority of them are on SSRI drugs. So now no one's talking about that. You can't just blame the object. More rules.
But I hate to say it, so are a lot of people that are
Well, so
mass
what-
shooters.
Exactly.
Because I'm trying to make your larger point. This isn't just a mass shooter problem; it's a national problem.
Yes. Okay.
So, but it is true that. So it's not that that's the factor, but
No.
it's truly correlative. And we got to look at that. It's a population problem. It's not just mass shooters; it affects mass shooters. So we're these people are growing in a broken culture more so than before. I think that's the issue you're getting at. But I think that the Texas law is going to get overturned if it hasn't already, if it's not in the works, and because there's precedent for that. Remember, this all began with the United States Supreme Court Bruin case from last year, where the court found that New York's constitutional or gun restriction laws were unconstitutional. So the court overturned that and really set a new precedent, which I think the language was interesting, that the government must demonstrate that any gun restrictions have to align with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. That's important. And so I think you've seen a Virginia law trying to confine gun use to within age parameters being overthrown. There's the New York law. I think the Texas law is going to get overthrown on that same basis.
Well, it
If
didn't
it's
make it
right.
out. It didn't make it out of committee.
Nico,
If it goes through,
didn't make it out of committee.
I think it's going
I think
to
it's
be
this comment.
problematic.
Unseal all juvenile records when applying for high capacity weapons.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, what she's talking about is once you become an adult, your records get sealed. That's an interesting. I haven't thought of that one, Annette. I mean, that's something that I need to think about more and get into.
Gene
but-
asks your thoughts on licensed permits in regards to gun ownership and acquiring firearms at gun shows.
I think that there should be a unified standard. What they talk about the gun show loop is that they're not the same standards used in purchasing weapons. They should follow any rule. Now, if you're a gun store owner, why do they get to not follow the same rules?
Yeah.
You're selling the same weapon I'm selling. I'm just a consistency dude. I think there needs to be due process, fundamental fair play, but there also needs to be fundamental rules. A rule is a rule. And of course, I'm not talking about tax loopholes or whatever. If you have a creative CPA, good for you. I mean, I'm talking about. I'm talking. You know, I'm talking about guns. I'm talking about what these we need.
That changed my mind because one friend went to a gun show and he told another friend, "Hey, I bought a gun here. This is yours." And I was like, "What?" Just like that.
Yeah.
It made me think like,
Yeah. Look, that's something that needs to be addressed. It's a real conversation, but again,
But
the
the
gun
concern-
advocates like mine, like me, they get so defensive. No, if we give you an inch, you're going to take a
Well,
mile.
yeah, but because it's true.
I got it. No, I understand.
So
that.
that's what I was gonna ask you to comment on that.
Yeah,
Please
go ahead.
please continue on that because I think that's the rub here. She brought it up because there's a rub. The rub is this is just another step towards a national gun registration, which of course precedes confiscation.
But all the
That
people
would never happen,
all
right?
the people arguing is that whatever a gun store has to do, the gun shows should do.
True.
That's not another
But I
step.
think
That's
there's
not-
a significant
that's consistency.
contingent that says the gun store shouldn't even have to do that. I think background checks is a
That's
good
a
idea.
different story.
It is a different story.
So
but
what do you? I'm not for a gun registry, but a background check is legit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we say certain people shouldn't have guns, and I guarantee you, there's even the most ardent, the most stringent, strong, however the word you want to use, gun advocate will agree that certain people shouldn't have guns.
So are they one and the same? So the federal government, because that goes through an FBI check. So if the federal government is doing a check, because it's going through a federal government criminal database to see if you have a record at the time that you're ready to purchase a gun. So even if you don't purchase that gun for whatever reason, you're still logged as having been at a store, a licensed store, gun store, to try to buy a weapon. So that's your name is now permanently attached to that inquiry. So in essence, whether you buy one or not,
what's the option?
no, what I'm saying is, I think it's a good idea to do a background check. All I'm saying is there's a legitimate concern.
But then when
that
you do the
become-
background check,
you get on a national radar.
I got you. I'm just saying, but
So I wish there was a way to do that without.
but
that's
what
my
if-
question. How do you play it out?
That-
How do you? There's no
somebody
way to do it.
buys a garage full of ammunition
Mm-hmm.
up until they're 18 and then buys their one gun with no problems on their background. I mean, there are always ways of getting around it.
Look, evil finds its way to do things.
Right,
And the only way to
right.
stop evil is for a good person
Nico,
to
what
stop
regulations
evil.
would you put, for example, if somebody was making a comment in regards to illegal immigration? There's a lot of ex-soldiers, ex-Marines, ex-people from Mexico or from other parts coming to the United States, right? They're going to be in the United States. Would you put regulations on saying if you're coming from other countries and we can't do a background check, you're going to have to wait a little bit more? Would you do something like that?
I want to know is, look,
If you're here illegally?
You're
about,
not gonna have-
of course. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
think about the standard you put in your home.
Broken the law to get here.
This is the
Not a
hypocrisy,
great way
brother.
to start.
They're going to change. I think they're
Sorry.
going to.
This is the hypocrisy. How do you control your house? Do you just let anybody come in your house?
No.
Do you have homeless people in your home?
Nope.
Do you let strangers say, hey, come on in? Where are you from? I'm from Haiti, whatever, Nicaragua.
I don't speak English. I'm
I don't
Chinese.
speak the English. Okay, and then you're gonna come on in, just hang out with my kids. Of course not. I mean, you know that. I mean, so why would we do anything different in this country? I think there's, back before this insanity, I think there's a lot of good people that wanted to come here and work. I know that for an absolute fact. I think if someone sponsored them, I think there should be a way to get them here working, get them a visa, get them paying taxes at some point. I mean, as much as if they're making money, they should pay on that and someone say, I'm sponsoring this person, I'm with them, get them a work visa that they can work if they're either a skilled labor or for educational purposes. We should do that quicker because my brother-in-law, I mean, is a doctor, a dentist in Mexico. He's the only one out of my in-laws, I mean, out of my other brother-in-law, my other sister-in-law, they're not a citizen. He wasn't born here. And you want him as your neighbor. He's a precious soul. He's a salt of the earth, and he's a highly trained professional. But he can come here and visit and all that stuff. But to work here and live here, I mean, he's been waiting for whatever, and he's got to reapply. And then you got people crossing the border in a rafter.
See, it's that kind of stuff really pisses me
that's
off.
where
You got
it's
somebody
broken.
with a skill set
that's where it's
that the
broken.
country may need, who can be a contributing member of society, maybe who wants to be an American. There's a concept. And then you have this sort of diversity visa bullshit, which Barbara Jordan railed against, the idea that you're randomly picking people from countries and not on merit. That does a huge disservice. But I don't think that's changed. You said before this became completely out of control. I think the majority of people that are coming, even though a lot of them are able-bodied men, and who knows if they're coming for nefarious reasons, and there have been individuals, a bunch of them caught, who are on the FBI's national terror list,
Well, then the
which is not
Venezuelan
great.
gang
but,
members.
But the vast majority of people are coming here for better economic opportunities. So what? A lot of people want to come here. We have 100 million people. Did you know that? 100 million people waiting in the wings right now who are trying to go through legal channels to get in the country.
Oh my.
100 million. So what if the
Unreal.
person that's homeless saying, I want to get into your house to give myself economic opportunity. I want money. I want food. I want to go take a shower. You could be like, well, I feel for you, but no, you're not coming in my home. I mean, that's not mean. I mean, I want to help these people.
think
we
about
got to
that.
do it the right way. That's all I'm saying.
1/3 of the population of the United States right now
Is
is
waiting legally.
waiting in the wings to do this legally. And we're letting droves of people who don't give two shits about the law coming over. Yeah, I
They don't know.
understand.
They're not going to assimilate. How are they going to assimilate? Because they're not going through immigration status, and they're not. I mean, like when George became a citizen in what 19 what?
It was 1986.
And so, and when him
Just
and his
before I
parents.
turned, I was still a minor. for
But
a few months.
you guys went through classes?
Oh, yeah.
You go
We arrived in 77, in August of 77. My folks are listening. If I'm wrong, correct me, Dad. But they came in August of 1977, and for 9 years,
Yeah.
took 9 years to become naturalized citizens. They were working multiple jobs. My parents are amazing human beings. After having come from Civil War, working multiple jobs, and they had to take a test. Go figure. What does it mean to you to be an American?
Yeah.
Do you know
His
anything
mom
about
will
the American
cry when she looks
Constitution?
at the flag. She cries when someone. I mean, she just a beautiful story. Go ahead. I'm sorry, George.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's absolutely true. She becomes very emotional because she really looks back at what she came from and what she came to, and how this country has just been an absolute treasure. Now, as a kid, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew something was fundamentally different when I was here. Now, I was riddled with fear because I was in survival mode. You know, it took me years to work through that by God's grace. But I have to tell you, I knew fundamentally that something had changed. I was in a peaceful place. I saw people respecting one another. I saw just a general mood of kindness. I delved into, as I learned more and more English. That's probably what really propelled me to learn English really quick. I learned it in about 6 months. As a kid, you learn a lot faster. And I started reading a lot of American history books. I'd sit in the library on my own and just read a lot of sort of American founding heroes. I was just fascinated. I couldn't have enough of it because I was just fascinated by this fundamentally different world. And that's where we got in this notion of ideas. I realized these people think differently about the world. Holy shit, this is totally different. And then that's that. I'd say my first introduction to Christianity was through public school teachers.
Let that sink in, Solo.
Man,
Virtually
amazing.
every single one. And I can name them. Jack Adams, Deborah Dietrich, Deborah Lee, Ann Hatch, lots of Deborahs, Debbie White, Kathy Moyer, who's still around, and she's in Pennsylvania if she was listening. These are people I'll never forget, and I have enormous respect for. They were believers. They love this country, and they were public school teachers.
Man, let all that just sink in. Man,
amazing.
Reincorporating that will combat this education of hating America.
But we're indoctrinating our kids, so Karen, we talked about this many times.
Yeah, no
before.
American flag.
Think about this, no
Right.
flags. I mean, that's why when we talked about it and we got into that, when you have people from the LGBT community advocating the only flag that should be in a classroom should be the American flag, I respect that.
Amen.
I'm saying absolutely. It goes because of that flag. But that's what Frank.
Would you be willing, for example, because they need to hear the other side, would you be willing to say, I would even remove some Christian flags?
The only flag in a school should be the American flag.
Yeah, I don't-
The only flag in a school should be American flag. End of story.
And
That's it. And a
I'll
Texas flag.
I'll be honest with you. I come from Pennsylvania originally, and I didn't even know what a Christian flag was until I got here.
Yeah.
And we got here.
I think the
16
ideas
years
are
ago,
something
whatever it was.
different. We have biblical Judeo-Christian ideas that have permeated this country
Amen.
and that are a
Yeah.
foundation. But the only flag that should be in a school
Yes.
should be the American flag
Yes.
and your state flag.
And I
That's
think,
it.
but if we're going to do justice to American history, you have to bring that out and point that out. That there's a Judeo-Christian philosophy.
Absolutely,
here.
of course.
That and explain what it means. Explain what it means when we say that America is a Christian nation. This is part of history. Go back to former Justice Brewer, David Brewer, United States Supreme Court, who wrote a little book called "The United States: A Christian Nation" in 1905. And he actually explains in there, we're not saying that you have to become a Christian. We're not saying that your leaders should be Christian.
That's right.
We're not saying you should be
The
converted.
ideas.
We're not saying any of that kind of thing. We're saying that Americans' political system, America's legal system, America's institutions have been molded by a philosophy that is overtly Christian.
That's it. That's
Okay.
it. Ideas have
And what does that
consequences.
mean? That gets into the 10 Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount. Again, there's a God to whom we will one day be fundamentally accountable for. There's you, right? And how do you respond to that God? Well, take care of yourself. You're a temple of the Holy Spirit. Take care, and then take care. But you're not responsible for, but you're responsible to your neighbor. God, self, neighbor.
Matthew 22:36 also.
That's
right? Love
American.
the Lord your God with all your
And it's
heart, mind,
American,
soul. Love
yeah.
your neighbor as yourself. 100%.
Before it was American, it was Christian.
But yeah, exactly. But Karen, and we've talked about this before. The New England Primer. It used to be in school. It used to be. Look it up. You can order one. George gifted me one years ago.
I have one from 1907.
Yeah, you have the original. I mean, I got the.
I have a copy.
Yeah, I have a copy.
not an
It's a
original.
small little book, and you should. I'll bring it next. If you want me to, I'll bring it next week. George has one too. But every school would teach from the New England Primer, and you should see the example when they do the ABCs. A, Adam, first man, and B, something else. It was all biblical references when they're teaching the ABCs, what they're teaching. Because they remember, our founding fathers wanted virtuous and educated people. You combine that with the 8th grade, go to wallbuilders.com. I don't know if they've posted it, but I saw it in my hand. I got a chance. I had pleasure.
No,
to
you
meet
can get it
David
on
Gordon.
Amazon. Yeah, like you said. Yeah.
The 8th grade
You're
exit
able to pull it
exam.
up. $7, I think.
The 8th grade exit exam, I could not pass today.
Yeah, the average adult would need.
George could, but I
The
couldn't.
average adult would
couldn't.
need a thesaurus. You'd need a thesaurus to go through because you just there's
Look it up.
It's an old synonym. You wouldn't be able. But it's beautiful. I mean,
Look
you
it up.
really get it. It's a
I
sense of.
have to.
Nico and I were reading Jefferson's response to the Danbury Baptists in 1801. They wrote him a letter on October 7th, 1802, because they were concerned. He was the first anti-federalist president who hated a centralized government. They were concerned about this idea of religious liberty, go figure. And he wanted clarification on the First Amendment. What does it mean? That's where he first wrote the phrase separation of church and state in his response to the Danbury Baptists, which has subsequently, since 1947, been totally taken out of its context. Anyway, I said, hey, Nico, here's Jefferson's response. So he's reading. We're sitting there reading. He's like, fuck did he just say?
I probably said it that way too.
English, please.
Debbie asks, because she wants to know, Nico, what, if any days, do you teach Bible study? Every Wednesday, where?
Well, Wednesday, it's a men's
It's a
Bible
men's
study.
Bible-
It's a
yeah,
men's Bible study.
Send the men.
Yeah, it's a men's Bible study at I Chihuahua. George and I are there, 7:30 to 8:30. It's at
That's a restaurant, I Chihuahua.
yeah, I Chihuahua is a restaurant. It used to be old Las
It wasn't
Palapas.
Nico cussing.
Yeah, no.
Mike, thank you for Sandra's your sister?
Sandra's my
Sandra,
sister,
Sandra's
yes.
watching. She said she's watching.
Sweet Sandra.
I don't know if
Sandra, praying
that
for
was,
you.
but she said your sister is. Gene, thank you for commenting. Everybody, thank you. Now, a lot of people today, especially today, have been sharing the stream. Thank you very much. Do it as much as you can because we need to keep having these conversations. So log on to sidebartv.com. Look at all the social platforms. Follow them. If you don't have Rumble, I would strongly advise for you to go on Rumble because as time changes, they're going to start canceling people. But go to Rumble and follow sidebar.com.
So Karen,
Yes.
that was the point about the guns. I mean, so Allen, Texas was horrific. I mean, I've seen the video. That if you saw someone took a video of it and they actually made it on
they
Twitter.
took it down real
They
quick,
took it
yeah.
down. Well, it was it was brutal. I mean, you have the little baby, the 3-year-old.
Did you
was
see
shot
it?
in the head. Yeah, I saw it. I mean, and
his
the
parents.
daddy
Yeah.
was holding him, and that Asian family, and then the 6-year-old's the only one that survived. And when you saw the video, and so what I tell people, because the part that has not been taken down was when he drove up with the Charger, and he's just sitting there. I mean, 3:30 in the afternoon. You think, oh, maybe he's waiting for someone to come out. Maybe he's waiting for a parking spot. Maybe he's texting and doesn't want to text and drive. You can think of 100 things that just like you're not paying attention. And then he gets out with no warning, and that's why the first step in protection is being alert. And we all are guilty of this. We're all instead of looking around and paying attention who's what and what's going on. And can you notice a look? Can you notice a dress? Can you notice a strap? Do you notice a barrel? Do you notice whatever? And then secondly, and this is me, I believe that if you're going to carry a weapon, which I do, and I advocate everybody does, that are law-abiding citizens, train with your weapon. You've got to train with your weapon, But and then that just raises the chances of you hopefully making it out of a situation. Doesn't mean someone can't get the jump on you or whatever. But it was brutal, and then he just started shooting. And then here's the deal. And I wish that the mainstream media would have jumped all over this more. Not that I watch mainstream media, but I wish that I would have heard about it more. I don't even know the officer's name. Why aren't we talking about this guy's name? There was an officer there that was handling another call, heard the shots, and I heard the dispatch communication. He's running and frantically yelling for backup, but he's still running into the trouble. He's still, and now the video of the picture of the shooter is, it's a great shot. He's bleeding out like a stuck pig that he is. And the officer engaged him and said, he's down, I got him down. And then he comes back on not even seconds later. I mean, you can't even imagine how many people that man saved. God bless that officer. That doesn't mean that if there's a bad officer that we don't hold that him accountable. The institution of law enforcement.
And this is really, isn't
we've
that
got
sort of
to
the
talk about that.
underspoken truth here? That we all, I'm just sick of it. It's nauseating how gun-related deaths, gun-related homicides, gun-related, you name it. Okay, what about all the people that guns save? What about the lives that are saved? Nobody ever talks about that. What the hell kind of analysis looks at one side pervasively and nobody calls these bullshit artists out? I mean, seriously, please go to the Crime Prevention Research Center. It's John Lott's work. The guy's amazing on this. He's been doing it's. If you want truly data-based research, free from the bullshit politics, please go to the Crime Prevention Research Center, headed up by researcher John Lott. I think it's the only organization, you can only bring him up, it's the only organization that actually has looked at this issue to actually do a serious analysis of the number of lives that have been saved.
Well, George, on the gun-related deaths, Karen, when we talk about alcohol, vehicle-related deaths, vehicular, and then gun-related deaths, not only when no one talks about this,
and he addresses that.
He's one of the only ones. Not only is the total number of gun-related deaths, including the suicides, but it's also including good shoots. It's like self-defense,
I get
good
it.
legal
That's
shoots.
crazy,
That
yeah.
is not the right analogy. You're skewing the numbers. If someone were to walk, we're at a restaurant or we're at a home or we're at a coffee shop, and someone walks in and they want to hurt you guys or hurt everybody there, and I draw my weapon and I shoot, bop, 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 and then that person passes away, that would go in that number.
Gun related.
But that would be defense of third person, self-defense. That's not the number you're talking about. You're talking about Allen, Texas. You're talking about the lady that shot those people in Nashville, Tennessee. That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about suicides, and you're not talking about self-defense.
The funny thing is, the only thing that I did hear about that Allen, Texas shooting is that the shooter, Mauricio Garcia, that he was a white supremacist.
Of course.
That's all I heard.
Right.
That was the news.
So look at this. Now tell me how any rational person can think that this is logically consistent. So we have a Nashville shooter that identified as transgender.
Yep.
That obviously targeted that school. Has a fucking manifesto. We know exactly why she did it. And then this prick
Correct.
that's dead, that
Correct.
deserves to be dead, has a patch.
Correct.
But in one day, he's a right-wing, white supremacist. He's Hispanic, by the way. Garcia, whatever his name was, Mauricio. But in one day, because of a patch, it's all over the place. We have a manifesto, and we're weeks later, and no one knows what's in that damn manifesto. We all know what's in it. But where it's a hate crime. Now tell me how that makes any sense to anybody. It shouldn't, unless you're part of a tribe, and your tribe is pushing a set of ideas that no matter what, these ideas, doesn't matter what the truth is. I don't give a shit. I want this to be true, and I want to win. I don't want to be credible. That's the only way you justify it.
And they refuse to release the manifesto if that doesn't tell you everything and what does. Outrageous. I can tell you right
Don't
now,
fall for this.
If it was a politically protected class, I don't mean legally protected. If it was a politically protected class, then they
were murdered?
They will. No, I'm saying if it's a politically protected class that is propagating these things,
Like a
i.e. the trans
transgendered.
cult.
Oh, got it,
If that's
got
the
it.
case, they walk between the raindrops.
That's right.
Okay, they won't be implicated. But God forbid, if it was a MAGA supporter, and if he happened to be anywhere near January 6th, it would be front page news. It would run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People, open your eyes, see what's going on.
Don't fall for this false narrative, this debate over guns. You got to push back. You have to educate yourself. I'm glad you mentioned the Crime Prevention Research Center, George, and John Lott's work, because that's critically important. I don't know if we have time to talk about CNN, Karen. I know we needed to. Okay, I'll just leave it on this note, and we'll wrap up because I know we try to stay with honor people's time.
Talk about the ratings. Go ahead.
Well, the ratings for number one, the ratings they
5 times their normal is 3.3 million
figure.
views.
Well, think about what they're doing. So they're bleeding ratings. Fox is bleeding ratings.
Totally.
Fox has lost 40% of their viewership.
Yep.
They're losing to MSNBC. It's totally unprecedented in 2
MSNBC
decades.
sucks. Joe Scarborough is an idiot, and I never like to define, but he just is an idiot. He's just a ideological, hypocritical.
He can't have a
fool.
gun.
No, that guy can't have a gun. No, there's no doubt about that. He's probably on SSRI drugs, right? But what I'm saying is, but think about that. So CNN's being criticized because they brought on a former president to talk. Because here's the deal: if you hate this guy so much and you think he's his own worst enemy, let him talk. There are certain witnesses on cross-examination. You're supposed to always ask leading question. And you never ask an open-ended question. And you never ask a question on cross-examination that you don't know the answer to. That's just trial advocacy 101. But when you have a witness that is their own worst enemy, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Let them go.
Let them go, yeah.
Talk yourself into
Kill
the
yourself.
Jury,
Yeah.
The jury hates
Precisely.
your stupid ass. Oh, and then what? I mean, those are questions you never ask
It works
to an
on
adverse
Biden.
witness. Yeah, no shit. That's why they don't let them talk.
But you brought this up in a text, and
Let him talk.
I've been covered up all week. I haven't had a chance to respond to that. But you said that you were underimpressed or not impressed by the fact that the audience seem to be clearly in Trump's corner. CNN went out of their way, just to be fair.
Okay.
CNN went out of their way to say these are Republican voters, not necessarily MAGA. And we know that there's Republican voters who aren't necessarily thrilled with Trump. So they're Republican voters, but they're also fence sitters. That's what CNN said.
I didn't know that. Okay, then there you go.
That they're undecided voters.
Okay, fair enough.
So
That's good.
That's the population
You
they
didn't
picked there.
respond, George. Thanks.
No, sorry. But it was, and this is why, because I wondered about that.
Yeah.
I said, if that was part of Trump's negotiation with CNN, that he'd have his peeps in the audience, then okay, it's not that impressive.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that they weren't. And yet it's interesting because they applauded, they laughed. In other words, they were enjoying themselves. Dare I say, he made us laugh. I mean, people like that. Say what you want about Trump.
charisma?
I mean, Trump's kind of funny, kind of
Very.
stupid sometimes, idiotic. I think he's kind of do it on purpose. Just Trump. I think people are attracted just because they can breathe deeply. They don't have to walk on eggshells. This idea, Nico, that sometimes I can just say what I fucking want.
That's right.
And I get to not be censored, right? Boy, there's a thought.
Well,
There's
look,
no curbing of free speech.
That host
Right.
got her ass handed to her.
Caitlin Collins was,
Yeah, man.
she was visibly out to get Trump.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
all
it was
about
obvious.
gotcha.
Their news star on CNN.
It would a total shill. She just totally embarrassed herself.
It was bad.
And I think people turned on her fairly early.
Yeah.
And it just got worse.
From the get-go.
And when the E. Jean Carroll, she thought she had a point to make. Oh, sexual abuse. And I mean, a Manhattan jury. And then people start laughing. When he called her, and I can't believe he said this, he said what everybody else called her a whack job. He says, I've never met this chick.
Well, do you know what he said? I saw this clip. Again, I wish I need to go back and watch
the
the whole
dog?
thing. Yeah, the dog.
Yes.
She's got a dog named
A dog or a
Vagina.
cat? He said named vagina. No,
Yeah.
you can say
That's
China.
crazy.
China.
Yeah,
It's a
people are
China.
laughing with
But
it.
is it a China vagina? I don't.
Can
it
he
was-
get sued again for defamation, calling her a whack job in public?
I mean, I guess they can try to bring a lawsuit. I mean, he's a whack job. That's
They
his
already
opinion.
won.
Okay, this isn't the first time he said that.
No.
So it's Trump. But good luck with that. Good luck with that. I don't know.
You know what's funny? Hey, you know what's funny?
That was stupid.
People are enjoying him being him.
They
Well, he had lost that for a while.
Yeah.
When George and I were criticizing,
I agree.
I mean, look,
I agree.
at some point, you guys say talk about election integrity without talking about the past.
Trump
You've
is
gotta-
a dam. The dam. He's a dam in this river of political correctness. He's the great dam. Like him, not like him, hate him, whatever you want. I mean, talk about he is an affront to the curbing of free speech. He's an affront to increase government control. He is an affront to the notion that we should even have racial conflict in the United States of America. And he is most certainly an affront to any kind of hostility against Christianity and religious liberty. People are largely in favor of that.
Yeah.
Yes, there are Democrats, real Democrats. I'm not talking about the effing communists that are running D.C. right now and cultural institutions. Trump represents those things. And he is an imperfect vessel, isn't he?
Yes.
He's flawed.
Yeah.
And guess what? So am I.
Yeah.
And that's really the whole point, that we are all flawed. And so I'm not telling people, as a supporter of Trump, I'm not telling them to sleep with him. Maybe that's the worst analogy ever.
totally.
I'm not. Or even have a big.
I'm not saying let him grab you.
Vagina. So I'm not saying you should have a beer with the guy. Okay. All I'm saying is, like you always bring up, what does the man stand for?
I think he
What
took
the hell did he do for 4
I think
years?
He took the nation to a place where people are getting tired, and you're like, Trump, tell him, because I'm not going to tell him. They're not going to listen to me. Trump, tell him. Yeah, and I think now that's where people are. They're like,
You know what you're
they're
seeing
pissed.
also? I think what you're seeing also is the stark difference between the polished DeSantis and the raw Trump.
You're so right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And-
An excellent.
it's
Feels good.
fascinating
Yeah.
that DeSantis
An excellent
has just
point.
tanked
An excellent
in
point.
the polls. I mean, some polls have him down 40% or some shit. Some are 30.
Oh, no, I saw one's 42 points down.
I mean, that's crazy to me.
Yeah,
He
that's
was ahead
fairly
of Trump
recent.
at one point.
Yeah.
Fairly
I mean,
recent.
but I think it shows, and this is what I tell people, again, like him or love him, you've got to get past
Yeah.
that. Who can put up with this crap from the left? You got to have a certain resolve. I asked another good friend of mine,
that's
who would you
true.
rather have? And he mentioned a senator that doesn't, Daniel something, I can't remember the name, but that is a liberty person. I go, but can they put up with the evil and the deception and the onslaught of the left? Whoever's the Republican candidate has to put up with the the mission statement of the left was just to get power, and they don't care how they get it. Lie, cheat, and steal to get
You
it.
were talking about one of my very few favorite Democrats. I don't know what he's doing. Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
No, this guy he's a Republican.
Yeah, because he's no longer in there anymore. Okay, interesting. I got to think about that.
No. I'll ask him again. I can't remember who it
I
was.
gotta think
Because I never
about
heard of
that.
the person.
Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be a good vice president for Trump.
Oh God, no. That guy's not. He's
I don't-
got a great.
I don't-
I mean, he can be an
I don't
advisor.
know, Salo.
That guy's not a wartime dude.
I think he's a decent communicator.
Yeah.
He's a decent
That's how
communicator.
Trump started.
And he's a good thinker.
And I think people should get his book. He did an excellent job in that book, Woke Inc.
Yeah.
It's a really good book. I think people should get that book, but I don't know.
Yeah, but
I don't think his 1% is going to help
Did you
him.
see him? Did you see him on Gutfeld?
Yes.
It was weird, man.
Yeah.
And like, you're trying.
He shouldn't have done that.
No,
if
he
I was,
shouldn't have
if I
done
was
it.
his press
I don't
guy,
know,
I would
man.
have
Never done that. He should have
What did he
never
do?
done.
I got
Yeah,
corny
it's just-
No,
jokes.
he was
He's got corny jokes.
That's what I'm saying. He's not
Yeah.
comfortable in his skin.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump's humor, whether you like it or not, his shtick and his mind things. Like he's trying to talk, and then she's trying to nudge him, and he's like, "That's what I'm asking." And she had to get the last word. I mean, she made it very personal.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're a very nasty person." The way he does it.
And it was impromptu.
It was
Yeah.
very. But that's what I'm saying.
Did you see the end when he goes? She says something, and he goes. It goes like
No, he
this.
kept doing that.
like-
He kept, and I like this. That's wrong. That's wrong.
But he-
That's wrong. That's wrong. And he
I
kept calling her out time. And then he had his cheat sheet, right? He had
Yeah.
timestamps, and you write them. And she's like, "Oops."
Now, do I think that you could merge a DeSantis style to a Trump style? I think you can.
I think that was what they
think
wanted to do
you
with
can.
Pence originally. What they
No,
wanted.
Pence, forget about it.
I-
No, but
well,
I'm just
I
saying,
never
I think
really-
you can. I really do. I think you have to find someone tremendously comfortable in their skin. They can speak the truth in love. That understands. That has two sides to themselves. I think you can do that.
I
really
have said
do.
this from day one. I'm going to say it till kingdom come. Unless something happens, dramatic change in my mind, I doubt it. I think a Trump Noam ticket is ideal. I think Kristi Noam is a star. I think she is
You were
articulate.
lukewarm on her at first. She's really won you
Yes,
over lately, huh?
yes, because about a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, she did something that threw me off, and I think she's largely redeemed herself.
Corrected it.
Because she didn't. Her legislature was taking a pretty strong stance on trans athletes.
And then
She quashed it because she didn't think
Well, she
that it
sent
would
it back
win
for
on legal
clarification.
merits.
Yeah.
She sent it through, and then it was a major battle. I don't know that she handled that well, but I think ultimately in the long term she did, and I think she redeemed herself. But she's done so many things correctly.
I still think she's a little too polished for me, but I like her a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I don't
I don't know. She's. I'm getting back to you being that notion of being comfortable in your own skin. She's absolutely comfortable in her own skin. Her background is fantastic. She talks about her. I love the way she talks about her daddy.
Oh yeah,
I agree
man,
I could listen to that all
agree. I agree
day.
with that.
She just wrote a book. I haven't bought it yet, and I need to. It's driving me crazy. I want to get her book where she goes through her background. She talks about her really sort of totally unplanned foray into politics and how it was really out of a personal devotion to her daddy. And how her daddy died unexpectedly, largely, and she inherited this, and she had all these effing taxes, and she thought the government stranglehold on family wealth.
it's a good story.
This is insane, and I love how she describes that journey, and I love the fire in her belly when she talks about those things. She's coming from a place of total unpretentiousness, and yet I think you're right. I think she is articulate, but I don't think it's because she's trying to be a Ramaswamy. I think it's because she's just polished.
Vivek, bro.
She's just
Vivek.
Well, Erica, Chris, and Sid. Well, somebody else.
Enough of my
Annette said
commercial.
That Ramaswamy would be a good cabinet position.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
cabinet's fine. I
Yeah.
think cabinet's fine. All right.
I mean, okay, it belongs in Trump's
Fair enough.
galaxy.
What do you
Fair
think
enough.
about
I'm
all this
just sitting
stuff?
back and
I
listening.
know.
So do you.
I want to hear from you sometime.
No.
People
Karen,
wanna
where
hear
have you
from
been?
Well,
I
you're
have been
talking too much,
listening
George.
and learning. Yeah.
Follow me and George.
Sorry.
Oh, tomorrow is chest feeding Mother's Day.
Hold on, no.
please.
Damn.
Are you trying to tell us something? Go ahead.
Yes.
Karen, I wish we would have said that on the radio.
I
man.
know. I totally
we have
just
so much
remembered
shit
right
going
now.
on.
I
Man,
know.
Said that on the radio.
Well, no, we should.
Feeders.
we
Happy
needed
Chest
Happy
Feeders
Mother's
Day.
Day, man. That's a big deal.
It is.
You know, a matter of fact, on R-Rated last night and on the men's Bible study on Wednesday, we talked about Mother's Day and while Christians should be defending mothers,
Yep.
we should be honoring mothers, give honor to whom honor is due. The society does not move forward without mommies. I mean, that's just a fact. Only women can bear children. Only a woman can be a mom, a biological woman. And we need to defend that, and we should honor. And look, even if you have a crappy mom or you lost your mom, this is not a day to be triggered. It's a day to honor. I mean, and so we just, man, I wish we would have mentioned that on the radio.
Yeah.
Karen.
I know I've lost again.
But
it's all my
in short,
fault.
Happy Mother's
My
Day.
fault. Happy
Thank
Mother's
you
Day,
very
Mama.
much.
Happy
Thank
Mother's
you.
Day. And happy Mother's
Well
Day to all the
deserved.
other moms out there. And George has been called a motherfucker many times, so happy Mother's Day to you. So guys, thank you for joining us today. Oh, there's one. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a blessed week and happy Mother's Day.
Lovingly called.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as lovingly called a mother?